How about now? I was just saying that I have 2 kittens on my desk, and they are currently drinking out of my shrimp tank. As is their wont, because for some reason they won't drink out their water bowl. They like drinking out of the shrimp tank. Yeah, sorry, I had the microphone muted. User error. Right, so tonight it is the Magellan Class stream. Now, I was going to do the thrusters on the Magellan Class, but Claire quite rightly pointed out that I'm most likely going to break the helm controls when I do that, so I'm going to leave that until after we've got this update out, because we can't be breaking stuff right before an update goes live. So, with that said, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do for the Magellan, but the question is what? So I think what I'll do is I'll put it to you guys, and I'll make a quick poll. Difficult to type around cats, both of which find characters appearing on screen fascinating. Cats really are a productivity hindrance sometimes. The poll is live. Please choose your pick. Yeah, I can't do a kitten cam right now because the camera's stuck to my monitor, but I'll have to take a picture. They're apparently both trying to sleep on one laptop. So, yes, one of the questions is when we're doing the 24-hour stream. Well, it just so happens that I did a straw poll. So let me share that a minute. While we're doing polls, we may as well do that one as well. So I've just linked it in the chat. So the big question really is, do we do the stream before Christmas or do we do it Christmas week? It really depends on everyone's availability, because obviously over Christmas people are going to be busy doing family stuff and Christmas stuff, so we just need to pick a day really. Looks like adding the rear bridge consoles on the bridge is definitely a winner tonight, so we will go ahead and do that. Overwhelmingly positive. Thank you, Caesar. Do you mean cam? We do have a spare webcam actually, somewhere over there. I thought you meant cam, yeah. Yes, indeed. I'm looking forward to getting the bridge finished. So that's one of the things I had planned for 227, which is going to be what I do on the 24-hour stream. So I'm going to try and basically get as much as patch 227 as I can done on that one stream. Fortunately, it's a very lightweight patch, really. There's not a lot of big heavy stuff included, so we should be able to do that. Right, let's get rid of my big old face a minute. So I shall share the stream, the poll again. So in case anyone missed it the first time, please vote when you want us to do the 24-hour stream. Yeah, I could do just an office cam while I'm streaming, but I need to have a tidy up before I do that because there's stuff everywhere at the moment. So when is Christmas week? Right, so that's 27th and 28th then. Seems to be the most popular one so far. Okay. I'm sure we can arrange something around that. Oh yeah, we'll share the poll on Discord as well and get as many people as we can voting. Okay. Let's get rid of a bunch of layers from this lot. Yes, hello. Okay, I now have one cat on my lap and one on my laptop. Cats everywhere. Hey, Hadrick. Yeah, the having the bridge crew actually up and about doing their job and leaving when you dismiss them, that's kind of where we're going with it. But there's a few other things we need to resolve along the way first, because we don't want to get to the point where you summon an NPC crew member and then it takes them 10 minutes to arrive. So we just need to make sure that the pathing is good and they don't go too far. And when the bridge NPCs are dismissed, we'll probably have them just chill in the VIP lounge. So we need to do all the logic for that to make sure that they are nearby when you need them. Yeah, it's kittens, honest. I'm not drinking the fish tank water. So we have plans for the bridge. Ultimately, there are two flaws with the bridge dome that we have. One is we've got this giant beam running around the outside there, and because of the angle of the windows, the beam kind of gets wider as you go outward. So you end up with quite a blocked visibility. And we really wanted to extend our vertical line of sight there. So especially when we're sat at the helm, we've got a much better view of space without this bar going through the middle. So we need to do that. We'll probably change the shape of the beam coming down here as well. Again, to try and give the bridge the best view it can possibly have. I think we'll probably go down the road of hollowing out all of this and then have a separate window frame that has like a lattice structure to it, or some kind of geometric framing structure with multiple panes of glass, not actually glass, but transparent carbon of some kind. So that's one of the jobs that I have penciled in for 227, along with hopefully having some kind of bridge wing coming out the sides. So like modern naval vessels all have bridge wings. So each side of their bridge they'll have a bit that sticks out, and that's for docking and basically giving the bridge increased visibility down the side of the vessel. Now obviously the side of our vessel's over here somewhere, so we can't use it for that, but as it stands right now, from the bridge you've got no visibility of the engines at all. You can't see them from the bridge, which I think is a flaw in the design. So I'd like to include some kind of little just bay window here, just so that you have the ability to look backwards and visually check the engines for any problems from on the bridge. So we'll do the bridge wing and the front windows at the same time, but that does also impact the amount of space we have here for consoles, because the bridge wing's going to probably be in line with this beam. So either we'll take this beam out or incorporate that into the design somehow, maybe come out like that in some way. But we'll see what we end up with. So that gives us probably enough room for 2 decent sized consoles at the back there. Now what we don't have, I think with this version of the SketchUp file, we don't have a lot of the interior geometry here. So again, I've mentioned it in previous streams, but some of the older stuff is split over a couple of different SketchUp files. So we might need to go back a version or two just to kind of dig that out. Yeah, so save that one. It'll be easier to do the interior stuff with the old one there as a reference. Yeah, exactly, Ziza. I think what we'll probably do is we'll have them on shift by default, and then you'll turn them off if you don't want them in a chair. So obviously if you choose to be the captain, then the captain NPC will vanish anyway. But the rest of them will all just be at their duty stations for the duration of their shift, unless they need the bathroom, in which case they will actually get up and do that. There's some... No, that's an old one. Ah, there we go. That's what we needed. Yeah, so right now, the bridge interior is pretty much one solid piece. So we need to split that up at some point into separate panels properly. Yeah, and have those panels, like the rest of the ship, be kind of independent and damageable, etc. So what do we have? We've got balustrade, the floor, the walls. Basically, I want to grab all the stuff that's pertinent and then none of the other stuff. I think that's about it. All of that stuff. And we don't need that. I'll keep that. Right, so if we group that up, make it a component. So there's a way of exporting just the components. Yeah, there we go. That used to be called export, so they've obviously renamed it. Alright, so we want to stick it there and there. Actually, if we stick it there. I might be in a hot tub. Be a nice stream from a hot tub. Hang on, I'll move my bubbler for the fish tank because it's... I refilled the tank with water and I think that the bubbler is in just that one place that makes it just breach the surface and make lots of bubbles. Joys of having a fish tank next to a microphone. Yeah, so save that. And we should be able to export all of that into the new SketchUp file now. And the two engineering consoles are going to be engines and energy. So there'll be one that will cover the FTL drive, the engines, the RCS, and all of that stuff. Things like fuel tank levels and energy levels for propulsion side of things. The other one will be primarily just about the energy generation on the ship. It'll be, you know, the batteries, the reactor, the fuel levels for the reactor, and that sort of thing. Yeah, you'll be able to make changes from those stations. So they're not just going to be passive monitoring stations. You'll actually be able to do things like turning the reactor up and down and, daily operational tasks. Just want to make sure I've got this aligned at the right height. Looks like it already is. Right, okay, so the bridge interior is back where it should be. Yeah, there'll be an environmental control station on this side. So that's one of the ones we're making. So over here you'll have environmental control and internal security, and then on this side you'll have the two engineering stations. So this whole alcove is dedicated to engineering. That's why the main breaker box is there as well. Whereas on this side we'll have a weapons locker here, because we've got this this cavity. So we've got this cavity here, and then we can fill that with a weapons locker. So we'll have a secure door on the front with a keypad, and that will go back into that cavity there. And we'll have rifles and pistols and that sort of thing. Just small arms, basically, for defending the bridge. Whereas on this side, in this cavity, this is where all the wiring and cabling is going to come up for the bridge, which will terminate on the box there. And I imagine most of it will come up through the ceiling or under the floor for the consoles. Damage control is basically part of the engineering function. So yeah, things like operating the fuel scoop and all of that, that's all going to be part of these two engineering stations. So much like how the sensors, which I don't have here, so where the sensors have got multiple modes, the engineering stations will also have multiple modes. So you'll be able to go from an overall view to like a high-level overview of the engineering systems, but you'll then be able to drill down into various different areas of that. Yeah, I had a quick look, Madman. I haven't had a lot of time to really delve into anything lately, because we're kind of at the end of a patch, so it's kind of, I'm spending all of my time bug fixing. But yeah, I did have a quick look. Again, I think we're going to have issues in terms of rolling it out in a performant way. The problem with spline meshes is they really increase loading times, because obviously it has to draw each spline mesh. So the more of those we have, obviously, the longer it takes for the constructors to run. But I shall performance profile it and have a look. But yeah, so on the sensors we've got multiple modes, and over on the engineering station we'll have multiple modes available there as well. So you'll be able to, again, drill down into different engineering systems and ultimately get a really good view of all the ship systems and have basic control over them as well. And if you select engineering on the holo display controls, then you'll see a 3D version of what's represented over here. I was thinking about maybe having a really, really big panel over here, but I think we'll limit it to separate stations, and then we'll just have links to two separate stations on here. Again, one of them is going to be very engine focused, and the other one's going to be very power focused. Things like the weapons and shields will be on the power one. Yep. There'll be chairs. So we'll put chairs of this style over here. These are only these aren't finished yet. There's still a work in progress, but yeah, chairs like this will be over here. Yeah, or a sofa, you know, something. So really, the first question is one of scale. It's like, how big do we want them to be? I was going to have them angled like this, but I'm not sure whether I'm happy with an angled screen. I mean, it might work, but you know, we'll give it a try and see. Well, when it comes to things like damage control, it's on a per system basis. So you know, you'll get alerts and alarms as and when it's needed for various systems. Just going to riff with this for a minute and just see where we go with it. I think the problem with having an angled screen there is that I think the wall angle might be just a little bit too extreme. Versus just pulling it out. Yeah, I think I do prefer the vertical screen. Then we'll just have to mold that into the wall design we've got there. Yeah, the angle was nice because it fits the wall, but I think not quite so nice when you're actually using it. Yeah, so it'd be something like that. Again, I want to reserve the space we have here for some kind of alcove that comes out. Yeah, I think you're talking about like the main system display screens you see on Star Trek. Our holo display is basically that. And we'll have that in engineering for the most part. Obviously, it will still be on the bridge when you turn it on to that mode, but we'll have the holo display down in engineering basically always on the engineering mode. So you'll have a big 3D view of the ship. I've got an example here. So I've always loved like the automatic repair system you see on the Passengers movie. See if I can find a decent picture of it. Yeah, that. So on Passengers, you've got obviously like a holo display of the ship, and you've got lots of alarms and alerts that are popping up all over the place for things that are faulty or need attention. So we're going to do something very much along those lines. So we'll have a big 3D model of the ship, and then you'll have all of the cables represented as actual 3D objects, like within that hologram. So if a particular cable is broken, then that cable's going to be flashing red on the hologram. And then on the engineering console, you'll have lots of alert cards that come up that have, this thing's faulty, this thing's damaged, etc., etc. Which I think is a cool way of doing it. But it's nice because you can walk around the ship and see firsthand where the problems are, and this is a lot more useful as a diagnostics tool over a 2D picture on the wall, which is why we went with a holo display. It's a lot more information dense than a 2D image. Just to be awkward, I think the chairs that I did are actually also on a separate SketchUp file. Not to worry for the moment though. So height-wise, we've got about 80, which is about right, to be honest, for a console. It's funny when you try and get these screens like human scale, they look quite small to begin with, and then when you see them in VR, for example, they're absolutely massive. So we just need to make sure we get that scale right. Right, so that's 1.5 meters screens, which is a big screen. And we just get the aspect ratio right. So we have a width of 1500. Then we need a height of 843.75. That's not right. 84.375 even. Yeah. That. So put that there. I'm trying to keep it 16 by 9 because one, that's a useful aspect ratio to use, and two, I like thinking of it like we're doing set design for like a TV show. And if you're building a Starship bridge for a TV show, then you're going to be using things that you have to hand. So there'll be a TV screen with some kind of like wooden frame around it to make it into a sci-fi screen on the bridge. But the actual TV that you'll be using is going to be a 16:9 TV, usually. So it's nice to go with that aspect ratio, as if we were building it physically. Is 16:10 a thing? Oh, right. I didn't know that, to be honest. Uh, 1.5 meters is 59 inches. If you want to go diagonal, that is 67 inches. So that's the equivalent of a 67-inch TV. Did the stream just die? Are we live? Okay, hang on. Okay, are we back? Hello, hello, are we back? Okay, I think we're good. Ah, okay, I'm glad you never left. Mine all froze up. Okay, good. Pretend that never happened. I'm on Starlink. It is physically wired, but we have a bit of a storm at the moment. It's actually a bit crazy outside tonight. These will be the engineering consoles, and the mirror of this will be the internal security and environmental control monitors. Obviously I want to blend these in better than this. Wondering actually whether or not we have the wall coming down vertically from that point. No, there'll be seated consoles. I'll turn all these walls off in a minute so we can see what we're doing properly. In fact, let's make a couple of extra groups a minute. So we want a deck interior floors, which we can stick that on. So if we explode that, get rid of that. Right. Just helps us see what we're doing a little bit. Yeah, having that come down vertically there helps us in several ways, because it means it'll play better into having the bridge wing on that side, and it makes it easier to get the consoles in. Question is though, where do we come down from? So is this going to have to be probably there-ish? Oh, for sure. I mean, we could definitely fit in more consoles, but this is going to open up, and we don't know yet how much room we'll have here. So what I want to do is make sure that we keep this straight so that we can maneuver those back and forth as needed. So I'll probably have to redo some of the curve around there. I may go ahead and do exactly that. So if we get rid of what's the best way of doing that? Conscious of like where the outer hull line goes. It's probably easier if I extrude the face from what we've got there. I think that's probably what I did here, to be fair. I made this panel probably 3 years ago, so it's a long time since I last looked at it. Yeah, so if we take that and that, let's copy them out of the way a minute. 2 while we're at it. So I'm basically just making a template for myself so that I've got something to extrude. With some awkward bits for good measure. Sophie, thank you. As always. I'm running out of ways to say thank you. Because you're generous on every single stream. And yeah, thank you. Means a lot. Grab a copy of that, delete everything else, paste it back, clean it up. That's a good idea. Okay, let's go with German. Dankeschön. Dankeschön, sehr gut. My German is limited at best. Right, so that needs to be... measure how far that is from there. So 8.5 from that wall. Do Klingons even have a word for thank you? It would seem unlikely. Okay, so 5. 0.5, 2.5, 1, 2.5, yeah, okay. Going to be a minor nightmare trying to round off some of these edges, especially like there, but we'll deal with that problem when we come to Or will we? Wondering how I did it on here. I think I just, yeah, so I kept it as a sharp edge for the framework and I rounded off the panel. Okay, I shall do the same then. Given how dodgy that looks, I probably did that by hand. I use subdivision though this time around. Make it a bit easier. Actually, let's get rid of that. Okay, so extrude 5 of the basic gap from the wall. And then 0.5 to there. Might be a slightly cleaner way of doing that. If I meow. If I do this face first and I extrude backwards, I'll end up with a cleaner result because extruding into a curve always messes it up. So we actually need to know the angle of that one. There, so that's 11. Right, so we just extrude it by 11 and then clean it up. Should ultimately give us a better result. It is absolutely hammering down outside and really windy, so if the stream suddenly disappears, that would be why. Just making a cleaner version of this edge. So that we're not fighting the geometry quite so much. Not that it lets me want to extrude vertically, of course. Cleaner. Let's do a similar thing here as well, because this edge is all messed up. Yeah, I tend to be the same. I generally quite like the rain. What I'm doing here, which looks laborious and annoying, is just trying to get this curve geometry lined up with that curve geometry so we get a cleaner edge. probably do actually is just extrude it up and then join the two together. Just making sure that's all coplanar across the top. Quite sure how I ended up with this vertical piece here being offset from that edge quite so much, because they should have been kind of aligned. But it's not the end of the world. We can just fudge it a bit for now. better. So basically that needs rounding off in the corner there, but we need to define where that vertical edge needs to be. Okay, so if we put in the consoles there, let's grab example person. Weird, definitely have an internet connection. Fine, we'll use that one. Yeah, so standing height puts us about there. So seated. Yeah, maybe raise them up just a little tiny bit. Okay. So that puts our vertical angle coming down from there. Yeah, it's not too bad. One of the things we need to be careful of is that when we put the chairs in, we don't overlap the floor, because we've got obviously the floor design going around there like that, with this bit reserved for chairs. Yeah, so if we measure maybe 50 from there. Although that would be 50 from the curve. So how big does the curve want to be? So we had a curve about that in the corner. Then we want maybe 50 from there. So that would put that there. Just so we've got enough just room in the corner there. And then if we separate them by another 50, so that's half a meter between the desks. Kind of gives us that. Yeah, there's still it still leaves us with a lot of unused space. Yeah, I think we're fine in terms of floor space. Again, we're going to punch a hole through this, so that needs to happen at some point. And then, you know, the question there is, how far out do we want to go with it? We want it to be big enough that you can get a decent view out the back of the ship. I suppose if we could always bring it back rather than forwards, and then have something essentially a bit like that. Yes, that would give us some visibility out the back, maybe just a bit more. We'd have maybe a frame kind of like that. Obviously we'd make it angled, I expect, just to make it fit the design. But we'd have that on both sides, just to give us that rear-facing visibility. So on the inside, that's already coming up to there, which is probably kind of what we want, to be honest. Yeah, because we could incorporate that into the design there. In fact, if we made it even bigger. View screens are expensive. That's the main issue with them, because something like a view screen requires writing to a render target at 60 frames a second, and that's, you know, fairly heavy rendering wise. Hey Max, how are you doing? Obviously we don't want anything that big because it starts intruding upon like the other bridge windows. So if we make that a bit smaller, so that should be the midpoint there. So let's say 1 meter there. Oh, auto-save, getting in the way. Unreal can render to a render target in real time, but doing so is very heavy, and doing so at a high resolution is even heavier. So when we eventually have things like security cameras, obviously they'll be rendering to a texture, but then we need to make sure we do that sparingly, so they can't have a high frame rate or a high resolution. Otherwise they will cause all manner of problems. Yeah, so the bridge will end up looking more like that, with windows facing towards the engines. So the idea being, from that window, you can look back. In fact, let's add a window a minute. Something like that. So you'll be able to just stand in there and have visibility of the rear of the ship for operational reasons. Now, it probably doesn't need to come out that far. Yeah, I'll definitely round it all off. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't need to be huge. It could literally just be a window just on the side there. I like the idea of not having it extend forward of this section here. I kind of like having the full 180-degree visibility around there. See, my original plan with making it stick out the side there was simply because that's nice and symmetrical, and I'm all about symmetry. But having it symmetrical does kind of mess with the rest of the windows, whereas if we had something that was no bigger than that, maybe. Yeah. Just flip that a sec so that we can move it. Yeah, Claire's always having a go at me for making things symmetrical as well. Yeah, so that kind of works because it gives us that space there. Let's grab that edge a minute and move that into view. We can cut through like that and make that bit like a bay window almost, and just have the engineering station beyond that, and then the same obviously on the other side there. Yeah, we absolutely could make the bridge wider. The only issue with doing that is that you have to kind of fill that space with something. It means that the interior of the bridge is going to be quite cavernous. Because we can have something there and probably even make it angled to match that. And we're trying to make sure we have enough room to do the bridge wings along with the engineering alcove, which I think that is more than enough. Yeah, I haven't really got room for an airlock. There are airlocks here and here down on C deck, so there'll be two very big airlocks there. I think we can make that work though. Yeah, true that. Okay, so if we assume that we're going to be punching a hole through there, I guess we just need to measure that actually. So we were doing 50 to there. Yeah, then it's a crazy distance over there. Maybe we'll give that an extra 30 to match the distance to the wall here. So that's 70 there, 70 to there. Right, that would give us a 3-meter cavity there. Yeah, we could, well, like the saucer of the Enterprise D, kind of make it that kind of a shape. It's entirely possible. We don't want to mess with it too much. We've iterated on this bridge enough over the years. We don't want to go for a major redesign. This was more about just adding just a little bit of extra functionality to what we've got. Actually, how tall is that? It's about right height-wise. Okay, so if we pop that out there. How are we doing? Yeah. It's kind of an awkward shape to marry up. I mean, you can have a ceiling window on it. Actually, if we grab that a minute. Just gives us a view each side. Yeah, so we'd have to blend in all the curved edges, of course. The nice thing is this is mostly square. I'll have to blend in that curve as well. So I might be able to maybe countersink them ever so slightly. Yeah, we want to avoid as much as we can in the way of remodeling anything at this stage. You know, ultimately, all the mistakes we make on this particular vessel are supposed to be fixed on the Pathfinder class. So, you know, it's in some ways it's okay to make mistakes on this one because the follow-up ship is going to fix them all. So this is very much a learning experience, both in universe and practically. Right, so we know that that's the extent of the outer hull. So we'll probably come across from there. Yeah, because we'll round that edge off there, and it's going to come through straight-ish to there. Yeah, this ship is it's supposed to be clunky and awkward and like not entirely fit for purpose, because we need things we can prove upon for the next ship so that we can demonstrate an evolution in the design. So the next ship needs to take all the little flaws of this one, iron those flaws out, and have something which is much sleeker and more usable. Yeah, I think I'm inclined to take the actual contour of the hull there and bring that across and just blend that in so that this will be an angle as well. I don't think it works particularly well being vertical versus the slope of the outer hull there, so if we angle that into the hull, in fact if we let's grab those a minute. Yeah, maybe something more like that, but blended in with the hull. Yeah. I will yeah, I shall delve more into that when we do the 227 work specifically. For now, I just wanted to make sure we had the physical space reserved so that we can work out where the consoles specifically need to go, which I think there works. So again, the more vertical we make this, obviously the more awkward that becomes, because we're we're wasting this much space and pushing the chairs further back. But I don't think that's necessarily the end of the world here, because we're not actually using a huge amount of space as it is. So we had a chair track, not unlike the other one. That would go something like that. So chairs would slide back and forth on that track there. We're still well within the bounds of the floor. Just to make sure we've got enough physical console space so that we're not shorting ourselves on actual screen real estate. Yeah, that's true. These can very much be alcoves. We can always cut into that, as you say, for legroom if need be. That's totally doable. So design-wise, so if we assume some kind of window here, and I don't think it needs to be maybe not even sticking out that much, to be honest. We'll just have a gap there. I think that's the actual framework, yeah. I won't punch a hole through that quite yet. Okay, yes, we want... One of the things I want to do across all the consoles, really, is I want to start separating out screen from keyboard space. So I want every single UI to have like a full keyboard, so that you can type in, like in VR, you can actually type on them properly. And just to add that other layer of sort of realism. So rather than just having what are essentially glorified iPads, we're actually, you know, giving it a keyboard, giving it more of a human interface with the systems. So especially when we add things like a console, where you can like literally telnet into devices across the ship, we're going to need keyboards for that. So these consoles especially are going to need keyboards for data input. So what we're seeing on screen is literally just data readouts. Let's grab these, add them to this group so that we are seeing that on both sides. Yeah, I might extend that across ever so slightly. It makes sense to have the two engineering stations like close together like that, but when you look at the other side and you think, you know, that's internal security and that's kind of environmental control, it starts to feel a bit weird with them being so close together. I'll see how it feels once we actually put it in engine and get a feel for you know, how cramped it is when you're actually sat there. Now, autosave is being keen this evening. Okay, so if we grab a random chair, make sure we're on the right level. Yeah, so probably something not dissimilar to that. Yeah, so screen size wise, they're going to be quite a bit bigger than these ones. Let's put them in engine a minute and see how big they actually are. Yeah, we definitely want to mould it in, for sure. For now, what I'll do is I'll plonk these down kind of approximately where we measured to. And add all of those to a group. Then we can export that as a test. We'll use the nanite collision on those just for simplicity's sake. Let's see, how close was my guess for the chairs? Why are they over there? Weird. Why was it saying no mesh? It's more like it. Oh, did I click that? Ah, I was almost lined up. I think the console itself is a bit big, so they can move back a bit. Yes, the comm station is right there. It's just it doesn't have anything on it yet. That's one of the things we'll be spending time on quite a bit next year. So for 2026, we're going to be focusing heavily on gameplay. And we want to start getting as much gameplay implemented as we can. So comms is going to be a part of that. In fact, if I had to hazard a guess, I would say you'll be able to hail an alien species long before you see them flying around. Okay, my initial thoughts with this are they are a bit too close together, or at least they're too far into the corner. They do need moving over a bit. We've got plenty of room on the floor there, so that's fine. And to be honest, doing this with an angled wall might not necessarily be terrible. Because having them stuck out like that doesn't look too bad. Maybe if we were to move it over 50 to there. Not terrible. I think some of these ones are worse. I think the material I used on this actually was less glare. Yeah, that one. Let's get rid of that then. Because there you've got pretty much the full specular response on that one. But we can change it to the no glare version, as you can see, which cuts that down quite a bit. You lose some of the niceties of the specular, but as you can see with these ones, you don't lose it entirely. Yeah, I like the idea of having some kind of pillar or some kind of support structure between them. And I think some additional horizontal spacing between them would be nice too. So let's do exactly that. That might be too much in the way of spacing, but let's see how it looks. Yeah, we were talking about having tilted screens, but I think they're going to look awkward when you're sat at them if they're tilted. Let's pop them back where we had them and then re-import. That would spread them out more like that. I think that's a more comfortable spread, especially on this side. Yeah, there is much in the way of fingerprints normally. These ones aren't so bad because they're kind of like the anti-glare version, but yeah, you can see plenty of fingerprints. Okay, so we'd have lights above each one, naturally. Kind of like that. Obviously we'll make them smaller and more like little spotlights. Yeah, I think the spacing looks better like that. We've still got room for a pokey window there if we want one. Yeah, and then we'll put something between them. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I like retaining the angled wall. I think that works, and it gives us the leg room we're looking for. But it does mean we're going to have to mould those, unless we have those almost on pillars on their own right. So we have maybe just vertical standing stations. Oh, we absolutely could do. Yeah, I mean, we can have them on the back wall if need be. This was more of a... like, if you're the captain, sat in your captain's chair, then you want to be able to spin round and speak to these people without them necessarily completely facing away from you. I know this person is, but if you put them in the corner that way, they'd be even less facing you. I mean, the bridge is already a bit big in terms of having to shout at the person across the room from you. I think, one of the things we'll probably do on the Pathfinder is have a smaller bridge. I mean, not like a lot smaller, but smaller in terms of being able to not have to project your voice quite so far. Like if you're speaking to the helmsman there, you're having to literally shout quite far from there to speak to them. There's going to be a lot of raised voices on this bridge, trying to speak to people. Let's just name some of these chairs while they're here, actually. So this one is environmental control, and it is environmental control. I guess that's operations, isn't it? I.e. deck crew. This one would be tactical because it's internal security. And then both of these are engineering. Yeah, so power and propulsion. Obviously, we've got that there as well, the engineering side of things. We might have a few other visible bits of hardware as well for the engineering alcove. Obviously we're going to have more wires and things coming out of this box. And then the tactical little cubby there for weapons and such. The way I mash the keyboard, oh yeah, typos are a fact of life with me. How big is that? So it's almost half a meter, which is, yeah, that's quite some depth. I mean, my desk is 60 centimeters, I think, off the top of my head. So really, we're looking at probably 30 at most, I would have thought. And that's probably quite generous in terms of how much room you're actually going to need for a keyboard. Or at least an interface. That clearly wasn't 90 degrees. That's more like it. I guess the other issue with maybe something like this is you're very close to the screen. I'm trying to kind of picture, like, if the keyboard was there, like the screen's going to be, you know, fairly close to where you're sat. So maybe we do want to extend that down a little bit, give that some more usable room. If we do that a minute. We make that a right angle, and that will allow us to extrude it. So we had 30, so that takes it to 50 again. Is that 50? That looks way too big. Oh, it is 50. Yeah, okay. So that would be 40. Yeah, that looks more reasonable. I don't have my tape measure on my desk like I normally would, so I can't measure my keyboard, but I'm guessing maybe about 12 to 13 centimeters. Average keyboard size. Ah, 13 centimeters. Wasn't a bad guess. Yeah, so 13 by 42 wide. was going on then. I had numlock on. Right, so there's the size of a typical keyboard, which is kind of tiny compared to the size of our screen there. And I think we'll make the keyboards bigger anyway, to make VR interaction easier. Obviously the keys on a keyboard are fairly tiny. I think for VR we'll probably make them twice that size. So that being the case, if we were to extend that out, it would be double. Yeah, so that's a double-sized keyboard. Which is probably about right for this. So if we just group that up a minute. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't have cup holders and a wrist rest, of course. You know, health and safety and all. Something like that. Can't remember what material I used for those ones now. Is it that one? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we need to do the same thing with these consoles at some point. So we'll extend the screen down, and we'll have the data input bit of the screen down here rather than trying to cram it onto the screen there. Like one of the problems we have in terms of our real estate on the screen is that we're trying to put in a lot of our data input panels inside where we're also trying to display the data. So that will free up more room for actually listing data, and then we'll move all that down there and just remodel this in its entirety pretty much. So I guess the other thing we can do here is potentially, rather than having these as separate units, like where we've done these two as a combined console, we could potentially do that here as well. So we can actually join these together and have a combined unit, again with like storage. So we can have almost like shelving up there. Something's meowing at me. Hello? Random confused looking kitten. Yeah, I quite like that idea actually, to have storage for tablets or whatever else. I like looking at it in terms of, if this was the cockpit of an airplane, you're going to have like cubbies and things for just putting manuals and leaflets and books and stuff. And I definitely think we need the same here. Given that this is a vessel for humans, run by humans, humans tend to have things like tablets, books, bits of paper, and you need somewhere to put that stuff. So that could answer our what do we put in the middle question. And we can even continue that design up into the ceiling as well, and kind of extend it around like that. Embed the lights into the ceiling bit and make all of that like a standing console. Not standing as in you stand at it, but standing as in it's like a separate thing. I quite like that as an idea. So that means that we'd have to extend that to there. Absolutely, it would have to have a whiskey dispenser. Wouldn't be fit for purpose otherwise. Yeah, exactly. If there's one thing I've discovered from this office, if nothing else, it's not having storage for things means it ends up on the floor. And I'm sure the same would be true in this kind of an environment. Without places to put stuff, you're just going to put it on the floor next to you. Obviously we'd embed all that properly, but you know, that kind of thing. And then we'd have probably the whole thing as like shiny black glass, but then we'd have like the wrist rest embedded into it, like how you have on smartphones. You've got the camera these days embedded into the screen, and the screen actually goes around the camera, so kind of like that. So we'll have the various things on here embedded into the glass, and then when the console's off, it just looks like a shiny glass panel. So when it's on, all this suddenly appears. So we'll also grab whatever material I used for that. Must have been that one. Oh, whoops. Didn't do the other side. Yeah, it kind of has that vibe to it, doesn't it? That looks a bit more natural. Yes, Verstus. So these are already set up for spawnables. So can spawn NPC is ticked, and they're specifically set to engineering. So yes, they will definitely spawn them. In fact, if you want to see what that looks like, you can do it right now. I think I forgot to turn on the loading light. That doesn't help. There we go. Peoples in chairs. Yeah, I think that's fairly good, height-wise. Yeah, I think the separation's decent there as well. Again, on this side, you know, environmental control and security being quite close together is a bit weird, but I think we can live with it. We definitely need like some kind of a window there. I think there's so much space along this wall. We need something there. I think I like the idea of a bridge wing window, but if we can't make that work, then just a window I think will be what we do. And yeah, and I do like the idea of making this a wrap over the top console with built-in lighting. Oh, of course, because this one's set to operations, deck crew. Obviously, it's got the same options as the helm would. Can it actually do it? Oh, it can. So yeah, the environmental control guy can fly the ship. For hilarity's sake. These guys shouldn't have anything. No, there's nothing they can do. Okay, right, let's try and expand that up and over a bit more. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, bridge wings on real ships do actually have the ability to control the ship. That's where they have like docking thrusters and things. Obviously, because you can see the edge of the ship from there, and it's safer that way. Ah, I was stuck in the wall. Yeah. Okay, so we had something like that. Again, just to make it all a bit more built-in looking. We'll have it contour to the wall there. So how big that would have to be. Probably quite big. Yeah. Or not, maybe. They're probably too big for lights, but let's give them a try anyway. I think smaller, definitely. Yeah, I'll do an end of year video, I would have thought. Yeah, we need to do our end of year update and let everyone know what we've been up to, what we've been doing, where the game's at right now, and what our plans are for next year. Although it's really easy, we're going to focus on gameplay. That's our plan for next year. What our numbers are telling us is that we've got lots of people checking the game out, but people aren't staying on the game for long enough. We want, you know, our average play time up in the hours. You know, most people tend to play it for about 40 minutes, and you know, that's basically a case of, you know, loading it up, checking out all the latest stuff, and then closing it again, waiting for the next update. Which is fine, of course, but you know, we want to give people more to do in the game. Probably don't need that light there now, to be honest. Oh yeah, good point. I won't delete that yet because it messes with the lighting controls there. These will need adding to that as well. In fact, let's do that. So we want 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, of course. So that, and that. They need to go on to the ceilings layer. Make sure I've got the right ones. Because you can't use the eyedropper if they're not on the same layer. So that one, one and that one. That was an extra one we didn't want. And then that one would have disappeared from there. That would have been that one. Okay. Thought I was going to have to throw something at a cat then. It's scratching at the carpet. No, I have to throw something. Fine. There you go. Chucked a blanket at them. That worked. Okay. Well, there are 3 of them, so there's usually one on my desk. I was wondering whether we need to extend that sideways just a bit. I think I'm happy with the placement of them. I like that there's a bit of fresh air on that side. And obviously we still have room there for something. Obviously that needs more there. See what we could do. Maybe. So we could, rather than going with the white plastic, we could try using this material instead. It's kind of like this bobbly metal material, just to give this section more of an identification. Yeah, let's give that a try actually, see how it looks. Yeah, I think I actually prefer that for the rear stations. Yeah, it definitely makes sense for the engineering console to have this, this kind of aesthetic to it, because it's an engineering station. I mean, maybe not so much this side. Obviously, the bridge pit area is all kind of, wooden inlay and shiny plastics. Oh, I'm going to throw something else in a minute. Hang on one moment. I'm calling for help. Okay, help is on the way. Yeah, basically. Yeah, I see if we can kind of try and blend the aesthetic a little bit, because at the same time it would be nice to stick with the whole wooden base look to it as well, especially because obviously the chairs are going to be on tracks like these ones. That needs finishing at some point. Yeah, I have 3 teenagers already. I'm well aware of teenagers. Okay, so let's throw a random UI, or at least get some placeholder UIs on these, so we can get a feel for kind of what the screens look like when you're looking at them across the bridge. Obviously, we want to being that this is like the command center of the ship, we want there to be a lot of visible screens. Like right now, there's very little in the way of screen. Now, that's partly because we don't want unnecessary screens. So like every screen we have on the bridge is obviously for a purpose. We're not just going to put a screen there for the sake of putting a screen there. But the side effect of that is that we don't have much activity going on. Like, not enough eye candy. So let's see whether putting in these rear stations helps with that a little bit. So I guess we're just going to have to make placeholders for all of them. Where are we? Bridge systems. Yeah, let's make a bunch of new folders. So might as well make folders for all of them. So we've got comms, we've got tactical, defense, internal security, and environmental control. So I'm tempted to use the sensors one as a template, but it is very, very weighty. Yeah, let's not. But actually, let's use the helm one. Oh, I didn't do the engineering ones. Let's do environmental control first. So copy that there, and we also need that one as well. So that's environmental control. Need a better naming convention for these, really. Yes, they definitely will, Anassi. Again, I want to really separate out data input from data display. So every single console will have its own keyboard for that exact purpose. Right, so we need to deal with the power side of things. So, yeah. So I'm going to change that to environmental control 1, which means that needs to cast that instead. Oh, and there goes YouTube. Hopefully we're still online. So that one's going to be environmental control. Oh, of course. Right, so we need to set the opposing variable on this. Because what we're doing is we're creating a reference between the blueprint and its widget. So that would be console environmental controls of type that's going to break a whole load of stuff, but that's fine because we'll delete most of that. Oh, just wait it for finish doing its search. There we go. So that's basically telling it who it is. Right, that's on this one, isn't it? Yeah, so it can just be widget. There we go. So we've got a reference to the widget, and we've got the widget updated with ourself, and our power stuff happens there. Okay, that can stay the same. Right, so we don't want any of that. That can stay the same. So we're basically just passing our replicated button presses through to the widget. That's just for the labels, and that's fine. Right, so we shouldn't need anything else on there. And then on the widget side of things, we can get rid of practically everything. So get rid of that. That's all the button handling, which we don't need. So get rid of all of that. We'll keep the loading screen code. Keep the customization. We don't need any of that. Yep, don't need any of that. Or that. Or that, or that. Okay, it's nice and easy. So we're just going to keep the customization stuff. We'll keep the loading screen stuff, and that's ready for use at a later date. Cleans that up. Right, and then on here, we just need to set up our basic UI. So basically everything in there can be deleted. Yes. So that can stay. So I'll get rid of the buttons. Until such a time as we actually have a Linux capable dev, we cannot support Linux in any way. So yeah, I mean, we've got obviously a channel on our Discord where Linux users can help support each other, but if there is a specific Linux bug, we can't do anything about it. We get rid of those ones a minute. And that. I've actually made some integrated panels that have things like the titles all built into them already. Not sure where that ended up going, but right. So what we need to do now is just get the size of the screen right. So I'm using a consistent scaling across all of the widget panels in the game, so that we have a consistent resolution and we don't have, you know, some panels are more pixelated than others, and it means that when we build a screen, we can kind of guess to some extent how big the widget needs to be to fill that space, because they have the same actual scaling. So on the parent widget, you can see that we're using a 0.04 scale, and we use that for every single widget, which means because we're scaling it down, obviously we're using a higher resolution, which makes them look nicer. let's drag this into the world a minute. Fortunately, these are all facing the same way, so they don't need a lot of messing about to make them fit. Okay. And now we scale it. So these are going to be quite big, so we're going to have to optimize a fair bit on just how much we are rendering that size screen. I can get rid of those. Let's just try to trying to color panels that aren't there. And then in here we need to I need to name this the other way around. I should call that one widget and rename the variable really, but never mind, it'll work that way around. But yeah, we have to set the size of the widget in world here. So what did we just do? I think it was 4,000 by 2,000, wasn't it? Getting to write on one tonight. What are we doing? Scaling. Right, so there we go. Almost the right size. Let's try 3,800. Almost. There we go, that's about right. I will just get the 16:9 ratio again though. So 3,800 is 2137.5. So 3,700 by 2137.5. It's interesting actually, I must have either mismeasured the screen or I've got it wrong here somewhere. So 3700 like that. Yeah. So maybe we'll make it ever so slightly smaller. Oh, hang on. I typed in 3800. There we go. That makes more sense. There we go. Now it fits. Right, so if we set this to set that to 1, so we'll default to being on, and then we need to scale that according to everything else. We'll only need to do this once because we'll copy paste this for all the rest of them. Oops. So 3700, 3700. I guess it's that minus 50. That should, yeah, there we go. And then that would be 3650, I think. Oh yeah, there we go. And then that would be that minus 70. I'll have to check that in game because there's a thing with widgets. If you make them really big, you can't zoom in on them, but you can check here. So that should be the same screen size and everything. Obviously it's very just blank at the moment, but it would have a lot of detail going on. And it needs a proper name, of course. So this one is environmental control. So again, the optimization with these needs to be quite heavy because with the way widgets work, they are a render target, which means we have a render target which is 3700 by 2081, which is a chunk of megabytes in VRAM. So when this isn't on screen, we need to make sure that we collapse this to a 1 by 1 pixel render target to make sure we clear that from VRAM. Otherwise we are using like 3 gigs worth of VRAM just on widget panels. Yes, AJ, I can actually, and that is a good point, because that's where it's going to live. So I think we might actually be setting the location for that on the constructor, which is why it keeps ending up in the wrong place. Hang on, let's just double check a minute. Are we doing that? Yes, we are. Yeah, so we're setting that. So every time we move it, it goes back. So we need to make sure we update that with where we want it to be. I would remove that from the code, but it would mean that all these other ones will get messed up, which we don't want. So let's just see whether we can move it without it. Yeah, that's fine. We'll move it and then we'll grab the coordinates. I think I'll maybe on this one specifically, I'll hide the background so that we can see that more easily. So I just stick it there for now so it's easy to access. Line it up a bit. Make it slightly proud of it, then you should see it easier. Right, and then we need to take the location of that and put that there, minus 90. Right, so hopefully that will stay where it is. So if we just do the internal security screen, and then I'll get rid of the background on that one. Okay, so we will copy that there, and then we shall copy that there as well. And then rename them. Right, then we need to go through the same process of fixing all of this, so get rid of them for a minute. Yeah, so ideally we need to rename this one. So this is WVP console internal security. I always like close this because I know that there's nothing affected by this, but even though you close it, it still carries on in the background. So we want to cast to internal security. Right, now we can set our variable, and then before we grab our reference to ourself, let's fix that in a minute. Let's replace that one in a sec. Just need to rename that as well. internal security. Just need to rename that one. Okay, and then now we can set that. That is a reference to ourselves. Oh, wrong one. Do is line that up and then just move it over for simplicity's sake. It's weird. And why does it still say environmental control? Oh, I know why. It's because we haven't actually told it to use the other widget. There we go. Right, and then on this one, we will just move that up. Just exposing that one. Don't stand on the keyboard. It's weird. I wonder why it's doing that. Yeah, I'm trying to see round a kitten. Sort of, so yeah. So as for tracking where all the crew members are, then yes, because what we'll do is we will have deck by deck maps, and we'll be able to work out who is on which deck, because we'll just keep a database of who is where. So that should be easy enough to do. And if there are intruders on the vessel, we'll be able to sort of highlight where they are as well, which will be useful. And that'll be the same on the holo display as well. So if you, again, on here, choose internal security as your holo display mode, then whatever's on this console will be represented over here. So you'll see the same colored blips on, on a 3D model of the ship. So you'll be able to see in real time where like all of the NPCs are and such, which will be very, very cool. Yeah, basically the same as the engineering displays, except obviously security focused, and like you'll have a color code for all the different bulkheads as well. So like if you lock all the bulkheads down, they'll all turn red, or some other way of indicating that they're all locked down. Yeah, exactly. kind of weirded out as to why that's disappearing. Like, but not from the side. That's like the opposite to where it should work. Because I've set these up to try and kind of match an LCD screen. So, like from the front, you know, they have their full brightness. But as you go to the side, you'll see that very subtly they get dimmer. Like the opacity reduces as you look at them sideways. So, you know, it gives you that kind of LCD screen kind of effect. But this one's doing it the opposite for some reason. It's getting brighter at acute angles. And I'm wondering whether it's because it's on top of another screen, maybe? Yeah, it is, because it's definitely getting dimmer there, and then stronger when you're looking at it straight. Not sure. Hang on. Let's move it down there, and then we'll move the background up over it and see whether that affects it. Okay, yeah, it is an overlay thing. Well, obviously that problem will go away once we move that onto this screen properly. So if we just kind of stick that there for now, and then we will resave its default location. There. No, it's a material function, so it's based on the normal direction of the material, basically. So it's nothing to do. It doesn't care where the windows are. I can get rid of that little block now. Okay, so I definitely like the up and over of the console. I think that adds a certain something to it, especially if we also maybe dropped it down slightly too, gave it a bit of shadow space above it. I think it definitely needs a wooden plinth to sit on, and it needs some LED strips somewhere. Right, let's just do the two engineering ones, and then we'll run it in engine and see how it actually looks running about. I guess the other thing we need to do actually is blend that screen down into a continuous panel. Yeah, then raise that screen up ever so slightly, so it's not like literally on the join. Oh yeah, I wanted to make sure that this was working. Interesting. Because it wasn't spawning the light. Let's ignore that check a minute and see whether that does it when we load up. so we want engineering propulsion engineering power. So again, we'll just copy those over. Rename them accordingly. So do that there, and want that to be WP engineering. Wait for it to do the thing. I'll see you, Max. Have a good one. Let's get rid of that. Cast to WP console engineering power. Set our widget. And then rename this one a minute. Oh, actually, I'll grab the numbers off the other one. Save messing about with it again. So this is engineering power systems, and the other one's propulsion systems. Just need to rename that. Okay, that should be that one done. And we just need to borrow some numbers from the internal security one. So the background is 203132. And then the other one is that. The copy-paste bit takes seconds because they are literally snapped into place. So yeah, that's the easy part. I think I'm going to change these two round. And I might change it again depending on how it plays out in practice. But we'll probably be interacting with the power systems more than the engines. The engines are more just ticking along doing their thing, whereas the power will be turning it up and down all the time depending on what we're doing. So I think this one's going to get a lot more use. So I will rename the chairs accordingly. So that one is actually power, and then that one would be propulsion. And just to stop this chair from being able to fly the ship, I'm just going to make this one science for now. Actually, no, I'll make it stewards. Right, let me just copy this one over to there, that one over to there. So that's propulsion and propulsion. So do that and then just change this. Okay, and all the same thing here again. So set the UI widget, of course. Goes to engineering prop. So set widget. Okay, that should be everything we need to do. We'll have to set up the power connection in a sec, actually, just to make sure they actually get power. So they're going to connect to the same power cable as the other bridge stations. which is not that. That would be that, which is that. And without this, they won't get any power. Okay, and then actually, in order to see them turn on properly, we need to set that to, I say set to 0, actually I'll just set these two to 0. It might sort that out itself, but let's set them back to 0 just to be sure. Right, let's give it a try and see. Okay, yep, they're on and that still works. Right, so if we turn off bridge hardware, they should go off, and those ones. And then we turn it back on. They should have their loading screens. Great. Got the right titles. Hey Celtic, all good, thank you. Okay, so it's, thanks. Yeah, so we're definitely going to have more going on the back of the bridge, but I think those consoles need to fill the available space a bit more. Again, obviously reserving room there for a window. And I do think they need to kind of honor the design language of the bridge. As much as I like the whole bobbly metal thing, I think given their location, I think, yeah, they're better off honoring the bridge design. I think I'm happy enough with them freestanding the way they are, but we'll have to blend that edge in around there. Maybe we'll blend it in. We might not actually need to, but we definitely need to round off the edges on here at the very least. And interestingly, these should actually have blue light strips around them. And at some point they've lost their ability to light up, so I need to kind of fix that and restore that. So I think this one had one as well. Or did I make it? Oh no, it does. It should have one. Yeah, so we should have LED strips on those. So we'll do the similar with this. I think we'll give it a wooden base and have like an LED strip around the base, like those do. Just to give it that consistent design language, and yeah, and just make it a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. Give them the wooden trim, like you got wooden trim around there. Obviously, this has a wooden trim going around there, and just stick to that same design language. yeah, where possible. I don't know why, but like, I just feel this massive urge to put a plant pot there. It just seems like it's begging for a plant pot. But yeah, it should look good once you know, once we've rounded it all off nicely and you know, built it nicely, and once those screens have a lot going on, you know, obviously those screens will have, you know, this kind of UI on them, and you know, you'll see lots of engineering systems on this side, which will be good. Very cool. Thank you, Festus. Very much appreciated. So I guess the last thing I'll do is I want to just show where I got to with the shuttles, because I was fixing a couple of bits with Earth not being visible for clients on login, and while I was at it, I kind of fixed both the player and shuttles knowing where they are. So I'll just get rid of them a minute. I shared a video of this on the Discord, but if you haven't seen it, then it's kind of interesting. So if we bring in 2 players and we'll do a listen server. Okay, so if I take the client and I run into the shuttle, so the client is now in the shuttle, and if we look down, we can see a Magellan, and if we look up, there's another Magellan. The one that's up there, that's the static interior that doesn't move. What you're seeing underneath is the proxy Magellan, which, as you can see, we're just above the bridge. And if we have a look here, you'll see that there is in fact a shuttle just above the bridge. So if I kind of minimize that a little bit, like that, and then get this one and kind of do that. So if I sit at the helm here, now as I start kind of pitching and rolling this ship, you'll see that from the perspective of the client, we can now see the proxy Magellan rolling left and right. If I use mouse cursor, you can see, you know, what I'm actually doing. It doesn't have proper sublight engines yet, we are just shoving it forwards, but if I hold this button down, you can see that we are actually moving the proxy mesh forwards. Not sure why it's covered in this pattern, it doesn't do that normally. And then we can pitch up. And you can see that on the server side, on the left, you can see that obviously the stars are moving up and down. And yet on the shuttle side, they are not, because the shuttle has its own view of space. So basically what we've ended up with here is we have independent control over both the shuttle and obviously the main vessel in the game. So we could have any number of shuttles and they'd all have their own completely independent view on the world, which doesn't sound like much, but it's quite a big milestone to get to. It means that we have the ability to have multiple vessels within the game world, both of which can be anywhere within the galaxy. So that Magellan can warp off. In fact, let's do that. So if I engage the FTL drive, it should just disappear. So just there, gone. So that's basically like that ship can now just disappear off into the distance and traverse the galaxy, and the shuttle is still where we left it. And they could literally be on opposite sides of the galaxy and still like seeing their own space. Oh yeah, the FTL effect. The FTL effect replicates between the two right now, and it shouldn't. But yes, so the Magellan is now leaving that system, and the shuttle is still stationary. But yeah, I thought you'd be interested to see that, because it is a momentous moment. Now we just need to obviously, have a proper shuttle model that doesn't look like this, and give it its its own controls and everything. But yeah, that is progressing very nicely. Yeah, definitely. Once it's got its own like effects and things as well, it's going to look amazing. Yeah, I think that's already in a build. But yes, I will put this out tonight. I'm doing basically 4 or 5 builds a day at the moment. Most of them are going onto our internal test branch. But yeah, there's no reason why I can't pop this one out tonight. And we can have a look to see what it looks like. Yeah, so there we go. So before I go, I will just share that poll again. So if you could please let us know when it is most convenient for you for us to do a 24-hour stream. Basically, we don't want to do the 24-hour stream when no one's around to see it over Christmas. So yeah, just pick the time that's best for you, and that we'll try and adhere to that. Okay, that's enough waffling for me. I shall see you on Friday for more completely random stuff. I don't know whether I'm doing planetary landings some more on Friday. I might do, but we'll see. We'll see where Friday takes us. Okay, have a great rest of the week, and I shall see you on the next stream. Bye for now.